What if I told you Canada's wealthiest pharmaceutical billionaires were found strangled beside their indoor pool in December 2017?
Posed like sculptures, belts around their necks.
And 8 years later, with a $35 million reward on the table, no one has been arrested.
This is the perplexing, haunting reality of the Sherman murders. We're talking about North York, Toronto, Barry Sherman, 75, the founder of the generic drug empire Apotex.
A company that made him one of the world's most aggressive pharmaceutical giants.
And Honey Sherman, 70, a deeply revered philanthropist known as the Queen of the Toronto Jewish community, an active and beloved connector.
Their incredible wealth and prominence, it just heightens the sheer horror of their discovery. Their bodies were found on Friday, December 15th, 2017.
Inside their mansion at 50 Old Colony Road, by realtors showing the house to prospective buyers.
And the scene itself, it just immediately defied understanding. A macabre tableau staged in the basement pool area.
That's right. They were found seated side by side, legs outstretched, with these leather belts looped around their necks and then tied to the low metal pool railing.
Which was only, what, 4 feet high?
Barely 4 feet high. They were fully clothed, oddly dressed in their winter coats, but the coats were draped over their shoulders.
Which I understand forensic experts later saw as a form of physical constraint.
It was. It limited their ability to move their arms.
And what followed was just a cascade of investigative failure. Police initially called it a baffling murder-suicide.
And for 6 weeks, that was the story. 6 weeks. Then, under immense pressure, and armed with the results of a fiercely independent private investigation, the verdict was forced into a reversal, a double homicide.
The private investigators, hired by the devastated Sherman family, immediately uncovered what police had missed.
Or ignored. They found 25 missed fingerprints.
25.
Wrist marks on both victims clearly showed they'd been bound while alive. And crucially, there was no forced entry into that high-security home.
Years passed with just agonizing slowness. Then, in December 2021, 4 years after the crime.
4 years. Police finally released this grainy security video of an unidentified walking man with a highly unusual distinctive gait captured near the home.
A new suspect, identified far, far too late.
The complexity of this case is driven by the vast ocean of potential suspects. Prime suspects include an angry cousin who failed a polygraph, who had publicly fantasized about violence against Barry.
You have business rivals whose companies lost billions to Barry's aggressive litigation.
And theories even involved close family members or international organized crime syndicates possibly hired to execute a professional hit.
Despite the most resource-intensive private investigation in Canadian history and a $35 million reward designed to break the silence.
The killer walks free.
Welcome to Whispers of Crime podcast show.
Subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and other podcast platforms.
To truly grasp the tragedy of this investigation, you have to first visualize the sheer, unnerving strangeness of the discovery itself.
Because that scene, that initial scene, it really set the tone for the catastrophic police response that followed.
The stage was the basement pool area of their North York mansion. So on that Friday afternoon, December 15th, 2017, a real estate agent, Elise Stern, she and her prospective buyers, they enter the basement.
And when she flips the light switch, she sees the two figures.
And it's chilling that her first thought wasn't a violent crime. She later told investigators she thought it was, and this is a quote, some weird yoga thing.
That reaction says so much, doesn't it? It speaks volumes about the killer's intent in staging the scene. The pose was completely unnatural for either a murder or a suicide.
So they were seated upright, side by side, their backs leaning against that low pool railing.
Just 4 feet high. The belts were looped around their necks and fastened to the railing, almost as if it was holding them in place.
And they were fully clothed in a pool area.
Fully clothed, which is highly unusual, wearing their winter coats draped over their shoulders like capes.
And the coats, you mentioned, they acted as a restraint. How does that work?
Well, forensic analysis suggests the coats were placed there deliberately. If you're sitting with a coat draped over your shoulders, your arms are confined by the weight, by the material itself.
It would make it much harder to fight back.
It greatly restricts your ability to lift your hands to fight off an attacker or to try and loosen a ligature around your neck. It was part of the coercive environment.
And there were differences in how they were found, right? Between Honey and Barry?
Yes. Honey was found slightly slumped on her side. She had visible bruising, facial wounds, which suggests she fought back fiercely.
And Barry?
Barry was seated, legs crossed, with fewer external signs of trauma.
Okay, so let's nail down this critical gap in the timeline. When was the last time the couple was definitively known to be alive?
So the bodies were found late on the 15th, a Friday. But their last confirmed activity was Wednesday, December 13th.
2 days earlier.
2 full days. Honey had picked Barry up from his Apotex office around 5:30 p.m. She'd spent the day meeting with contractors for the new mansion they were building.
So they were busy planning for the future.
Very much so. The very last confirmed communication we have is a 5-minute phone call Honey made to a close friend at 6:21 p.m. that Wednesday evening.
So if we take the discovery time and backtrack, that immediately establishes a 36-hour window. Why is that window so critical in a homicide investigation?
It is absolutely fatal to an investigation. In homicide cases, the first 24 to 48 hours are everything for collecting what we call transient forensic evidence.
Things that disappear quickly.
Exactly. Anything easily lost or degraded. We're talking about trace DNA, fibers transferred from the killer's clothing, any fingerprints or palm prints left on surfaces.
And of course, footprints, tire tracks, especially in December in Toronto.
Crucially, any tracks in the soft ground or snow outside. The 36-hour delay fundamentally compromised the quality and integrity of all of this evidence. For a professional killer, this delay was an enormous, unrecoverable gift.
And this leads directly into what happened next, the catastrophic police blunder. I mean, how could police look at this scene, two prominent, wealthy individuals staged in their own home, and immediately suggest a domestic incident?
It remains the most infuriating question for anyone who follows this case. The Toronto Police Service, specifically the lead investigators, they immediately leaked the theory of a murder-suicide.
That Barry had killed Honey and then himself.
Yes, and that tunnel vision was established almost instantly.
It seems like they just focused on the staging, the belts, the railing, and just jumped to the simplest, even though it was the most bizarre conclusion. They ignored everything else.
That appears to be the case. They ignored the entire context of the victims' lives. This couple was intensely active workaholics planning their future.
Right, building a new $20 million mansion, planning trips to Miami, Japan, Israel.
This profile does not align with a sudden, violent, staged murder-suicide. And what's more, the theory immediately erased the possibility of an external perpetrator.
Beyond the lifestyle contradictions, the physical reality of it, it made the murder-suicide theory just scientifically absurd, especially for a 75-year-old man.
Completely absurd. And this is where the forensic details are so important. Forensic pathologists quickly pointed out that the staging, seated, constrained by coats, tied to a low railing. It's physically inconsistent with suicide by hanging.
So it wasn't a hanging?
No. Dr. Mary Case, a medical examiner who critiqued the case, remarked that if this were a murder-suicide by hanging, it would be the first one recorded in history. The cause of death was ligature neck compression.
Okay, explain the difference. What does that mean?
Sure. In a typical suicide by hanging, the victim uses their body weight, or at least partial body weight, to cause the compression. This often results in classic V-shaped ligature marks on the neck.
But that's not what they found here.
No. In the Sherman case, the force applied was horizontal neck compression. It's more like manual strangulation or someone tightening a band around the neck.
Yeah.
The belts were tied to a 4-foot-high railing, with the body seated on the ground.
You can't do that to yourself.
That position is not physically tenable for self-strangulation, particularly not for a 75-year-old man performing it on himself and his wife. It required a separate, sustained external force.
So the family, facing this narrative that just dishonored their parents, they had to immediately fund their own investigation to correct the record.
They mobilized resources instantly. The Sherman children rejected the murder-suicide theory as hurtful, and they hired this powerful private team. They were essentially running a shadow homicide investigation.
And who is on this team?
A-listers. High-profile defense lawyer Brian Greenspan, former Toronto police detective Tom Klatt, and the highly respected former chief forensic pathologist Dr. David Chiasson.
And for 6 weeks, the Toronto police just maintained their initial position, refusing to shift focus.
They did. For 6 weeks, police reports confirmed they were focusing only on the murder of Honey, assuming Barry was the killer who was now dead. They were investigating a closed domestic case, not an open-ended hunt for a double murderer.
Which gave the real killer an enormous head start.
An unbelievable head start. It was a failure of imagination and, frankly, standard protocol.
What concrete discoveries did the private team make that finally forced the police to publicly reverse course?
The private autopsy performed by Dr. Chiasson was pivotal. That's where he found the wrist marks we talked about earlier. And beyond that, the private investigation team went through the crime scene with extreme diligence, and they uncovered specific physical evidence the police had missed in their initial search.
Let's quantify that failure. I mean, the price of that systemic collapse is just monumental. What specific evidence was bungled or ignored by the police?
The list is shocking for a homicide of this profile. First, the crime scene was not properly processed. It wasn't vacuumed for microscopic fibers and hairs, which could have linked a perpetrator to the scene.
And the fingerprints?
Right. The private team later found and reported 25 palm and fingerprints that the police had either missed entirely or just failed to log and process properly.
Missing 25 latent prints in a case like this, it suggests a severe lack of focus.
It suggests systemic incompetence rooted in that initial faulty theory. Why look for an intruder's print if you assume the killer is already dead on the floor?
It's a domino effect of failure.
It is. Furthermore, the timeline for collecting video evidence and DNA from people who had access to the home like contractors or staff, it was all delayed. And perhaps the most damning piece of institutional neglect.
What's that?
The lead detective assigned to the case, Detective Sergeant Gomes, didn't visit the scene until days after the bodies were discovered.
Days.
Days. He effectively delegated crucial initial oversight.
Ignoring video, delaying DNA collection, top officers failing to visit the scene for days, all because of an initial flawed theory. It's just a profound institutional failure.
It provided the killer with an unrecoverable gift. The reversal, when they finally declared the deaths a targeted double homicide on January 26, 2018.
That was 6 weeks later.
That was a public admission of severe investigative failure. By the time the Toronto police were finally looking for an external killer, the physical trail was cold, and any professional perpetrator had long since established a solid alibi, or more likely, left the country.
Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all major podcast platforms. Like, share, and comment on this episode. Drop your review and rating.
The police may have eventually admitted this was a homicide, but the critical question still remains. Why the strange, morbid staging? If this was a professional hit, wouldn't they just want to make it look like a botched robbery, something simple and less personal?
That's what I don't get. The staging seems so deliberate, so personal.
And this is where the case truly becomes complex and unnerving. The staging moves it beyond a simple financial transaction into something personal, psychological, or highly manipulative.
Let's analyze that staging puzzle, specifically the connection to the Shermans' own home decor. That detail is incredible.
The detail is highly suggestive. The pose-seated, legs outstretched, heads tied to the railing, was eerily similar to two life-sized junk sculptures of human figures.
What are these sculptures?
They were located in the Shermans' basement media room, just down the hall from the pool.
So the killer took time, risking exposure, to pose the bodies to mimic artwork the couple actually owned. What does that imply about the killer's relationship to the victims?
It implies intimate, inside knowledge of the home's contents and layout. Knowledge that only someone close to the family or an operative who had conducted extremely detailed surveillance would possess.
It raises the question, why reference their private aesthetic? It feels like the killer intended the staging to function not just as a distraction,
but perhaps as a private message.
a message of control or humiliation.
It could be both. It was an intentional act of psychological dominance. But functionally, it was a calculated red herring, designed to confuse investigators into thinking it was a sexual or consensual act or a murder-suicide.
And it worked.
It worked perfectly. The fact that the Toronto police immediately accepted the staging at face value allowed the true coercive nature of the crime to be concealed for those 6 critical weeks, exactly as a professional might intend.
And the family's private investigation provided the essential counterpoint to that illusion, the physical evidence of restraint.
Dr. Chiasson's autopsy proved that the scene was manufactured. He found clear marks on both Barry and Honey's wrists, indicating they had been bound while alive.
Which immediately confirms coercion and premeditation.
Absolutely. They were restrained before the final fatal act of strangulation.
But the critical point here is that the actual restraints, they weren't found at the scene.
And that is the mark of a sophisticated operation. The belts were left to complete the suicide illusion, but the physical restraints used to subdue them, likely durable plastic zip ties or cords, were removed from the scene by the killer.
That takes time and composure.
A lot of composure. The perpetrator intended to conceal the coercive nature of the assault. They successfully sanitized the scene of the most obvious signs of a struggle.
Let's look at the final moments distinguishing the trauma suffered by Honey versus Barry. You said Honey fought back.
The evidence points to Honey resisting fiercely. She sustained multiple facial wounds, including bruising and cuts to her lips and nose. Forensic analysis of blood pooling also suggested she may have been subdued or even killed elsewhere.
And then dragged.
Potentially dragged to the pool deck and staged.
And Barry?
Barry had no visible injuries other than the neck compression marks. This suggests a few possibilities, all of them chilling. He may have cooperated with the attacker, perhaps surprised and immediately overpowered.
Or maybe trying to protect Honey?
Or perhaps he was trying to protect Honey and acquiesced to the killer's commands before being subdued himself. The lack of defensive wounds suggests he did not engage in a visible physical fight.
The method of entry remains a staggering issue for a house of this stature. How did the killer get in without forced entry?
Police confirm there was no forced entry, which is really the cornerstone of the theory involving intimate knowledge. The highly sophisticated house alarm system was deactivated.
Deactivated? Was that normal?
Not at all. The housekeeper and the Sherman's personal trainer confirmed this was highly unusual the first time they had seen it off in 3 years.
So someone either knew the code or knew how to bypass the system, or they just knew the couple was lax about security that specific night.
It appears to be a combination of intimate knowledge and exploiting a specific vulnerability. An unlocked basement door and an open window, reportedly left open earlier to air out a recently painted room, may have been the entry and exit points.
That suggests the killer knew the house's routine, knew the security was off, and knew the physical weak points.
They did. And we also have that small detail about Barry's personal effects near the garage door.
What was that?
His gloves and some inspection paperwork were left just outside the garage door, which is on the path leading to the pool area. This suggests he was surprised or intercepted precisely at that transition point.
As he was coming into the house.
Right. The attacker was ready, waiting, and operating with a high degree of confidence and intimate knowledge of the Sherman schedule and movements.
In a targeted double homicide like this, motive is everything. The Shermans were billionaires, but Barry Sherman wasn't just wealthy, he was notorious for the way he fought his battles.
Barry Sherman's reputation was defined by contradiction. He was an academic prodigy, an engineer, an astrophysicist, PhD from MIT, who built Canada's largest generic drug company, Apotex. But he waged corporate wars ceaselessly.
He was dubbed the most active litigant in any industry in Canada. That nickname alone speaks to a man who used the legal system as a weapon.
He did, and he created an extraordinary number of enemies in the process. One peer offered a chilling assessment, calling Barry, quote, "the only person I have ever met with no redeeming features whatsoever."
That's brutal.
It suggests pure ruthlessness. Yet at the same time, he was praised as a philanthropic Robin Hood for challenging big pharma and driving down drug costs globally.
And he knew the danger he was in. He even acknowledged the existential threat he faced.
He did. The sources recall a 2001 book where Barry himself mused that he was genuinely surprised one of his competitors hadn't knocked him off already for costing them billions in lost patent revenue. He lived fully aware that his business strategy generated corporate hatred on a massive global scale.
So let's talk about those corporate enemies. Apotex wasn't just dealing with small disputes. This was industrial warfare against global giants.
Apotex was engaged in hundreds of legal battles globally, often running up to 100 simultaneous court cases. Their strategy was to constantly challenge the patents of pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer, Merck, Eli Lilly,
forcing them to allow generic versions to market faster.
Exactly. This strategy was wildly successful for Apotex, but it cost the original patent holders billions in lost revenue. It generated a level of institutional animosity and, frankly, a desire for revenge that is almost unparalleled in Canadian business history.
So we have a clear motive for a massive professional hit driven by corporate revenge. But Barry's financial empire wasn't just Apotex, was it?
Far from it. Barry maintained a huge, complex network of side businesses and private financial dealings. Some of these were described by investigators as dubious or even involving fraudulent schemes.
Like what?
Complex tax evasion schemes involving luxury yachts, the creation of numerous overseas tax havens to shelter his wealth, This deep, complex web of non-Apotex holdings opened him up to potential enemies far beyond patent lawyers.
Enemies in the murky world of international finance and illicit dealings.
And that complexity likely forced police to expand their investigation far beyond Toronto.
Right, they had to follow the money.
Absolutely. The investigation expanded to at least 5 other countries, following a potential trail of money overseas. Furthermore, Apotex itself was involved in internal feuds, including suing a former employee for alleged espionage stealing drug formulations.
So the leakage of intellectual property or financial secrets could also be a motive?
It could. And let's not overlook the specific non-corporate financial debts Barry was carrying. The connection to businessman Frank D'Angelo is significant.
Explain that connection.
It provides a very strong, isolated financial motive. Barry was D'Angelo's primary financial backer, investing heavily in his numerous ventures, like Steelback Brewery and its filmmaking projects. When D'Angelo's companies failed, Sherman suffered a reported loss of 100 million Canadian dollars.
100 million.
At the time of the murders, D'Angelo's entities ultimately owed Sherman over $100 million, plus interest. Barry Sherman's removal immediately removed the person who was aggressively demanding repayment of that staggering debt.
Okay, so moving from corporate rivals to the deeply personal, the decade-long conflict with Barry's cousin, Carrie Winter. This seems to be driven by pure malice.
It was venomous. Carrie Winter was one of Barry's 4 cousins who had been pursuing a billion-dollar lawsuit for a decade,
$1 billion.
claiming a 20% stake in Apotex rooted in the original sale of his late uncle's company. Just months before the murder, a judge dismissed the case as fanciful.
And Barry, showing his combative nature, he didn't just walk away from the dismissed suit, did he?
No. Barry sought $1 million in legal fees from his cousins, later reduced to $300,000, which they were actively appealing just before the murders. The case was dismissed, but the acrimony was boiling hot.
And the statements made by Carrie Winter, which became public knowledge, are just profoundly disturbing.
They are. Winter publicly admitted to entertaining extremely violent fantasies, claiming he fantasized about, quote, decapitating Barry and rolling his head down the Apotex parking lot.
And he made a bizarre claim about Barry asking him to arrange Honey's murder years ago.
Yes. He claimed Barry had approached him in the 90s, asking him to arrange Honey's murder, a claim the Sherman family strongly and publicly rejected as a baseless fabrication.
And when the police finally focused on Winter, what was the result?
The result was highly suggestive. Winter failed a police polygraph when questioned specifically about whether he had previously discussed arranging Honey's murder.
He failed it.
And his alibi for the night of the murders was incredibly weak. He claimed he was at a Cocaine Anonymous meeting, but later admitted he had, quote, no alibi. He said he could have easily driven to the Sherman home that night without anyone knowing.
Which brings us to the internal sphere, the immediate family dynamic. Despite the vast external enemies, we can't ignore the immediate financial relief that Barry's death provided to his heirs.
The financial weight within the family was immense. Court documents revealed Barry was carrying huge, complex liabilities, including owing $1 billion to various companies, which he allegedly had no immediate intention of repaying.
He was juggling massive, high-risk financial obligations.
He was. And more acutely, weeks before the murder, he put direct financial pressure on his own son.
Jonathan.
Yes. Barry requested his son, Jonathan Sherman, repay tens of millions of dollars that Jonathan had borrowed for his storage business ventures. Jonathan maintained this was simply navigating a difficult financial situation, but the timing is extremely suggestive.
A massive loan call-in just weeks before his father's death. It suggests deep financial strain and familial conflict.
It does. And the ultimate motive, of course, revolves around the estate. With both parents dead, the entire estate estimated at a staggering $5 to $10 billion pass immediately to the 4 children.
That is the crux of the inheritance motive.
And the timing of Honey's estate planning also adds tension. Honey had reportedly told a credible source that she was updating her will just weeks before her death, though police have never located a new will.
What could that mean?
It fuels speculation that Honey may have been planning to dedicate more of her vast fortune to charity, or perhaps alter the distribution to her children, introducing uncertainty and potential conflict among the heirs.
And this is compounded by the deeply troubling reports of sibling suspicion.
It is the most painful layer of this case. Investigative reports suggest that some of Jonathan's siblings privately came to suspect him of involvement in orchestrating the murders.
He's denied it, of course.
Vehemently. Jonathan has vehemently denied any involvement, publicly stating his dedication to finding the killer.
But his public dedication, specifically the massive reward,
Yeah.
introduces this complex paradox that investigators have to consider.
The reward paradox is chilling. Jonathan personally added $25 million to the initial reward, escalating the total to an unprecedented $35 million.
And you have to wonder.
You do. Is the reward meant solely to find the killer? Or is it also the ultimate calculated demonstration of innocence by the person offering it? It's a calculated global bounty hunt, but the fact that the person most rewarded by the deaths is the one driving the bounty is a complicating factor that cannot be ignored.
So moving into the years following these immediate investigation failures, one piece of hard evidence finally gave the public a face, or at least a profile, of the possible killer.
The mysterious walking man.
The police waited 4 agonizing years until December 2021 to finally release this grainy security footage of an individual they classified as a definite suspect. Why the 4-year delay?
Well, police claim they needed that time to analyze thousands of hours of surrounding security footage from neighboring properties. They had to systematically identify and eliminate every known person captured near the home during that 36-hour murder window.
So this person was the only one they couldn't account for.
They stated unequivocally that this individual was the only person caught on video they could not identify or eliminate, which is why they classified the individual as a suspect.
And what makes this person's appearance so distinct that they became the focus?
It was their movements, specifically their gait. The police focused heavily on the suspect's highly distinctive walk, describing it as appearing to kick up his or her right boot as they take each step.
A kick-up motion.
Yes. This unique signature is the key identifying feature they hope the public recognizes.
Can we speculate on what might cause that particular gait? Is it an injury or something intentional?
It could be several things. An injury, perhaps a chronic condition affecting the hip, ankle, or knee, causing them to compensate with that distinctive motion. It could be specific footwear, a heavy boot, maybe a custom shoe insert.
Or a disguise.
Or, in the context of a highly professional staged hit, it could be an intentional disguise, a purposeful alteration of their natural walk to make identification from video or witness testimony harder.
And the walking man's behavior suggested professionalism, not just a random passerby.
Absolutely. Analysis showed the individual spent a very suspicious amount of time in an area near the home that was intentionally not covered by video surveillance.
A blind spot.
A known blind spot. They lingered there before emerging and walking back the way they came. This calculated approach is highly consistent with pre-operational surveillance, mapping out security weaknesses by a high-level operative.
Despite this crucial piece of video evidence, the Toronto police have maintained this frustrating wall of silence regarding their overall progress. We know they're holding back information.
They are. In April 2019, police acknowledged they possess a sealed working theory and that they have an idea of what happened.
Which suggests they know the framework of the crime, the method, and maybe even the motive, but they lack the prosecutable evidence to make an arrest.
That's the logical conclusion. They're resisting disclosure to protect the investigation's integrity, but this has fueled years of public frustration and speculation.
And this hidden theory, it seems to involve people who are either highly connected, well-funded, or already gone.
That inference is supported by search warrant documents reviewed by journalists. These documents reveal police have identified numerous persons of interest, some of whom have refused interviews with authorities.
They've lawyered up.
Essentially exercising their right to remain silent despite facing questions in a massive homicide investigation. Even more tellingly, some individuals the police wish to interview have reportedly left the country.
Which adds significant weight to the theory of a hired foreign assassin.
It does. Someone who executed the hit and immediately disappeared back across a border to safety and professional silence.
The extent of the sealed record is also an unprecedented roadblock to transparency in this case.
It is. The courts have agreed to seal extensive documents. Autopsy reports, crime scene photos, witness statements, and estate details. The Sherman family trustees fought successfully in the Supreme Court of Canada to keep these financial and personal estate details secret.
And while police cite protecting the investigation, this secrecy blocks the public from truly understanding the full scope of the evidence.
Including the initial forensic failures and the true scale of the financial motives at play.
One of the most controversial decisions made by the family involved the physical evidence itself, the demolition of the murder mansion.
In May 2019, less than 2 years after the crime, the Sherman family requested and was granted permission to demolish the mansion. It was a deeply symbolic act.
But permanently eliminating the physical crime scene, that seems so counterintuitive to solving a double homicide. Why would they do that?
Well, critics argued that demolishing the house permanently eliminated the potential for future forensic breakthroughs, particularly with ever-evolving DNA technology.
Of course.
However, the family viewed the house as a monument to tragedy, toxic with grief, and essentially unsellable due to the intense stigma.
I can understand that.
The decision means the investigation must rely entirely on the samples and data collected during those first 6 bungled weeks, without the ability to revisit the physical structure.
Which brings us back to the sheer scale of the family's ongoing pursuit of justice. That unprecedented $35 million reward.
The case remains officially unsolved, frozen in this frustrating limbo between massive resources and utter silence. Barry and Honey Sherman's children, led by Jonathan, have continually escalated the reward.
$35 million for information leading to an arrest and conviction.
This massive financial incentive is the ultimate calculated gamble. It's designed to overcome every possible barrier, loyalty, fear, financial security, hoping to breach the operational silence surrounding what was clearly a highly efficient and well-protected operation.
The crime exploited the couple's lax security habits. The alarm was off, a basement door unlocked, and it relied on deep, intimate knowledge of their movements and the home's layout.
It was executed with that strange personal staging that successfully confused investigators. It's clear this was not a crime of opportunity.
And that initial police incompetence. It provided the killer with that crucial, unrecoverable window to solidify their alibi and disappear.
Despite an unprecedented reward designed to break the silence and years of international investigation, the identity of the person or persons who bound, strangled, and posed Barry and Honey Sherman remains one of Canada's most enduring mysteries.
The family's search for justice continues, underscored by that staggering $35 million offer. If the killer was hired, the people who ordered the hit must be convinced their secret is worth more than that life-changing sum. It leaves us with a truly chilling question. What kind of loyalty, or what kind of power, is protecting a secret worth $35 million? And who wields it?
Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all major podcast platforms. Like, share, and comment. Give us your positive review and rating.
If you have any information, no matter how small, that could shed light on the murder of Barry and Honey Sherman, please contact the Toronto Police Service Homicide Squad directly or submit a tip through their dedicated contact channels. Every detail matters in this fight for closure for the Sherman family.